everybody. Thanks very much for having me here this evening. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm going to talk to you about the something known as developmental assets, and also what our committee is up to, and share with you a few examples of what some other communities have done. So as Erica mentioned, our work grew out of the Community Partnership on Drug Abuse, and they were around since 2004. And you may remember they were formed when there was a lot of attention paid, especially in the media, to prescription drug abuse. There was a lot of negativity at that time, and people were really upset. Families were really upset with what was going on, especially with OxyContin drug abuse. And so the committee was struck, and they worked for a number of years and took on a number of initiatives. And one of the initiatives that they found was very positive was something known as developmental assets. And we really liked this approach when we were part of the Community Partners on Drug Abuse because it's backed with research. It's shown that young people who have many assets in their life do very well, and asset building initiatives do very well for young people to prevent drug abuse. So that's why we really kind of grabbed onto this initiative. When the Community Partnership decided to disband, there was a number of people on the committee that still felt passionate about some of the more proactive approaches, especially developmental assets. And so we wanted to keep meeting. And so now if you hear the committee name, the ABCs of Building Neighborhoods, that would be us. And as Erica mentioned, we do have 24 members. I'm just going to quickly mention some of the folks that are represented on that committee. And just to throw it out there, anyone at all is welcome to kind of join that committee and meet with us. We meet once a month because we'd love to have more people work on this. And hopefully as you hear what I'm talking about, it may spark some interest with a few of you. So some of the people on our committee right now is Family Service of Eastern Nova Scotia, Department of Community Services. We have members from Cape Breton University Nursing Department and the Library, Nova Scotia Community College, the Whitney Pier Youth Club, Island Community Justice Society. We have folks from Community Care's Youth Outreach on the north side, Sydney Mines actually to be exact, Townhouse Citizen Service League in Glace Bay, the police, and the RCMP. And as Eric also mentioned, one thing that I'm really excited about is we have young people on our committee, and a lot of organizations around in the community, they serve youth or they work with youth and they're passionate about youth, but they don't necessarily have members on their committees. And we're fortunate to have 3 young people on the committee that bring a whole lot of ideas to the table. So just to give you a sense of what I mean when I throw out the word assets, assets are 40 skills, their relationships, their values, their opportunities, and their resources that young people need to thrive. So it could be things like support, having a supportive, loving home. It could be having a place to constructively use your time. It could be being taught skills like decision making and problem solving, and really having a positive view about their future. And there's all kinds of ways. That's what I really like about assets is you're given the list of the 40 assets that young people need, and there's really a lot of creative space in terms of how you might go about building some of those assets. So there's no real blueprint. It depends on the community and the strengths of that community. The other thing that I tend to ask people to get you thinking about assets is to think about a young person that you care about. Could be someone in your family or who lives on your street or that you work with or work for. And if you ask yourself, what do you hope that young person would possess by the time they're 18 years of age? You know, what skills, what qualities and abilities? That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about assets. So it could be things like self-respect, self-esteem, or education. One thing that I also wanted to mention to you is our committee did a survey in 2008 of young people in our area, and we measured them on how many of those 40 assets they possess. And it wasn't just a survey we created. There's a measure that's used across North America in various communities, and it's created by the Search Institute, and those are the people who kind of coined this term developmental assets. And it was 1,302 young people from New Waterford, Coxheath, Sydney River, and the North Side communities. And what was found was they possessed 20.5 out of 40 possible assets. So we have to celebrate that we have a number of assets, but I like to say we're halfway there, so we do have a lot of work to do as well. Just to share with you some of the reasons why I'm passionate about assets, because that's what tonight is all about, is the passion behind it. Assets are protective, so the more assets that a young person has, the fewer risk-taking behaviors they have. So when you think of young people in the community, of course you would like to see them with fewer, vandalism behaviors or drug-taking behaviors. The other thing that's really neat is it focuses on youth participation. So young people are really consulted and they help design programs and projects. They're not just given a project and say, come to this program or come to this space or time. The other thing that's really interesting is it's very intergenerational, so it brings together people of all ages. So a lot of asset projects would bring together senior citizens and young people. And as a result, barriers are broken down as well as misconceptions, because there's a lot of groups of people in the community that don't interact. And through these asset building initiatives, we hope to, break down some of the stereotypes that exist between groups. Assets are also skill building and strength based. So it focuses on bringing out what people are good at and also teaching them new skills. The other thing that's great too is they can be built anytime, anywhere, or by anyone. So they're simple, but they're powerful. So something as simple as walking down the street, making eye contact with a young person in your neighborhood and saying hello, that can build an asset. If you were to look at that list of 40, you could go down and say, by saying hello to somebody, check, 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 I'm doing all of these things. The other thing that's great is asset building is sustainable because it's not a program, it's an attitude. So it's a way of kind of looking at things, looking at communities, and looking at relationships. And it's community driven, not professional driven. So instead of someone who may be a social worker or a nurse or psychologist coming into a community and saying, these are your deficits, this is what you need, here's the program, it's asking the community to come together and say, what do you think you need and how can we support you to do that? The other thing that's great is there's a culture of caring. So I like to think, when I talked to my grandmother about developmental assets, she said, it sounds like the good old days. It sounds like the neighborhoods that I was used to when if someone was sick, you knew about it, you knocked on their door and you gave them chicken soup. Or if someone new moved to the neighborhood, you welcomed them. So I kind of like to think that if communities and neighborhoods took on this approach, it would kind of be going back to that old way that my grandmother kind of gets the gleam in her eyes when I talk to her about it. I don't have a staple, but it's not moving either. All right. The other thing, I'm big on creativity. I love artistic expression and creative approaches. And I really like that you can go into a community and say, here's this list of 40 assets. What do you think you can do to build some of these assets in the lives of youth, instead of coming in with your own predetermined ideas? So there's so much room for creativity and so much room for people who are not normally or regularly consulted to come to the table with their ideas. I also really like action. So there's a lot of meetings in the community where you kind of sit around. You do a lot of talking, good talking, mind you, but not a lot may happen. And the thing with assets is it's driven by action. So I really like that as well. So how are we going to build assets? So when our committee decides what we want to do, we actually look to some of the more powerful examples across North America. And we're actually fortunate because close to home, Miramichi, New Brunswick has done a lot with building assets. And it's really, really neat there because what they've done is, in addition to their municipal council that meets regularly, they have a youth council. So that youth council meets, the adult council meets, and they inform one another. And there's a youth who kind of sits at the adult council meetings and vice versa. And there were issues that went on there, such as, youth curfew and things like that, and they had discussions about it. The other neat one that I'd like to share with you happens in Saskatchewan. And some of you may have heard of it. It's called Catch a Youth Doing Something Right. And it grew out of the RCMP there. And what the RCMP do there, instead of just giving out tickets for, some of the more bad behaviors that people do, is they go around and they look for good things that young people are doing in the community. So they take the slogan, Catch a Youth Doing Something Right. And if they see a young person, biking and wearing a helmet, or if they see a young person, like an older young person, teaching another young person how to skateboard, they give them a ticket. But the ticket's actually a voucher for, the movies or a food coupon or something like that, or a sticker. And it's been excellent because it's opened up the rapport between the police and the youth. And they find that youth come to the police officers in advance now, if something is brewing or going on, and there's a real relationship there. I just want to share with you one more story as well before I tell you what we plan on doing. Wait, now where are we? Oh, it's a story that comes from Ontario. And I just want to highlight that it doesn't have to be organizations such as the RCMP or the YMCA or some of these bigger organizations that build assets, and can be someone just in their backyard. So what this man did in Ontario was he was really kind of sick of seeing young people in his community with nothing to do. So he thought, what do I have? What can I do about this? So he got some scrap wood that was lying around, and he had some tarp from camping, and he made this huge screen out of the wood and the canvas. And then he went to a nonprofit in his community. He borrowed their projector. He gathered up his neighbors' lawn chairs, with their permission, of course. He fired up the barbecue. They put, some, corn and different things, hot dogs on the barbecue. and they showed family-oriented movies. So what they had was a community drive-in without the cars, which is awesome. And the young people would come, they would sit in the lawn chairs, they'd watch the movie, people would kind of discuss the movie after they watched it. And what happened was a lot of the youth who didn't have positive adults in their lives, they formed relationships with adults, and those barriers were broken down. So that's an example of someone who, with their creativity, didn't require any money, just some things he had lying around, and networking with some local people pulled something together. And so when I talk to you about assets, those are the sorts of things that I'm trying to get across. So some of the things that we plan on doing is in Glace Bay in the spring, we're going to be painting a mural. And instead of just painting a mural, what we're doing is we're working with students in junior high and high school who are art students. And those art students are meeting with various organizations that work in Glace Bay. So there's the YMCA, Career Enterprise Center, UNIA. Excuse me, I have a habit to, when I get going, go really quick. And I'm thinking about those 8 minutes too. The YMCA, UNIA, Townhouse Citizen Service League. And so what they're doing is they're meeting with these organizations, they're learning about what they do, and then they're designing a piece of the mural for the organization. So what we're going to have at the end is a wall divided into very large puzzle pieces. Each organization will get a puzzle piece. And it's going to kind of be a mosaic of, you know, when all these community organizations work together, this is what we can achieve. But what's unique there is the youth are really kind of in charge of what they want on the puzzle piece. And they're also doing some service learning there because they're learning about what the organizations do in the community and creatively trying to get across with symbols, phrases, what the organizations do. So that's one thing that we're really excited about. So just keep your eyes out in May. It's the 150 Commercial Street, right when you come down around the corner in Glace Bay. The other thing that we plan on doing, and we're going to be needing lots of volunteers for this, so I'm looking out into the crowd, is we're going to be setting up asset headquarters. And we're going to set those up in 8 communities. And there's going to be teams of 15 residents at 8 of those sites. We're hoping that those teams of 15 will be mainly young people, but we'd like to have some adults to kind of guide the process and bring some of their skills and expertise to it. At each of those sites, they're going to take the list of 40, and they're going to receive some more formal asset-based training. And they're going to kind of design a project for their community that they feel is needed. So it could be anything from a community garden where you plant herbs and vegetables, the youth kind of foster the garden, look after the garden, and then maybe senior citizens teach them how to cook with those vegetables, cook healthy meals. Could be something like that. It could be a computer program where young people use their skills of technology to teach senior citizens. And I don't want to throw out ideas because it's really for those groups to come up with. But that's something else to watch out for is asset headquarters. And if you're interested in being part of a team who takes this and is able to use your creativity, I've left some magnets actually on the table where the coffee's being served, and my number's on that. So if you have any questions or ideas, feel free to contact me. The other thing too before I close is if you just search on the web, if you type in 40 assets, lots of information will come up and give you more information on developmental assets. So just again, keep in mind that we will need volunteers because it is about people power. These asset building communities can't happen without people who are willing to intentionally take on assets and build them. And so in closing, I would just like to say to discover and uncover the positive things that your community has to offer and catch youth doing something right. Thank you.